figure out how to manage stress. And that's when I realized one thing, that we need to go back to our school days. We all like to go back to our school days, don't we? When we were in school, we wanted to go to college. When we went to college, we wanted to do our PG. And then, when we got into our PG, we wanted to start working. We wanted to get placed, as if that is the be-all and end-all of everything in life. The gentlemen got placed, the ladies got misplaced. Now, when you start working, the first thing you say is, those days were much better. Right? Don't you? Yes or no? Yes. Right. So, I decided that we should probably always look at going back to school once in a while. And the first thing we talk about when we talk about going back to school is learning joyfully. How many of you, I'm very keen to know, how many of you grew up as little boys and little girls in Gujarat? Can I see your hands go up, please? Great, wonderful. How many of you remember Chaki Ben, Mari Sathe Ramwa Avsho ke nahi? Bahut salon ke baad, right? Now, funny, a South Indian guy who didn't grow up in Gujarat remembers it. Do you know why I remember it? My wife used to sing this for my son. And trying to put him to sleep and going to sleep in the process, I kept listening to this song. And I'm sure those of you who didn't grow up listening to this, grew up probably singing Baba Black Sheep or Jack and Jill or something like that, and also hoping that Jill will also come rolling down the hill after you, right? We still remember them, don't we? Do you remember your physics and chemistry formulae and equations? You don't. Why? Because somebody said, this is a stick, and that is a lesson, and I want you to remember this. And the other thing that happened was someone came and introduced a very interesting system called semesters. So we learn and we forget, and we learn and we forget, and we learn and we forget. Whereas, if you go back to school, suddenly, when you are in the 11th standard, there may be a question from the 5th standard. In fact, that's what life is. Life doesn't come in semesters. Life doesn't even test you in semesters. Life suddenly asks you a question which it may be asking a nursery student or a 2nd standard student. So how do we prepare for it? So learning joyfully is something which I always request everyone to do, because when you learn joyfully, those lessons remain with you for a very, very long time. We all remember all the stories that we learned from our grandparents. I have always been telling my son, you learned a lot about Mahabharata and Ramayana thanks to television. Isn't it? Thanks to Raman and Sagar and V.R. Chopra and people like that. You have an arrow coming from here and another arrow coming from here and things like that. We learned it sitting in the laps of our grandparents. I don't know how your grandchildren are going to learn those stories. Probably from a laptop, not in the laps of your grandparents or parents. So, we are talking